Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Thought Leaders in Business, for inviting me. Thank you, Yale Club, for hosting this presentation. My name is Moschovitis. Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity awareness training, or as the title of my upcoming book says, How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Hackers. Now, I know all of you are particularly excited and can't wait to have a conversation about cybersecurity. Everybody wakes up in the morning and the first thing that they want to talk about is cybersecurity. And you've heard it all before. Part of the reason that nobody wants to talk about it is because they have heard it all before, in the sense of the doom and gloom that is persistent in the field. Oh my God, we're all going to be hacked. There's only two kinds of companies, the companies that have been hacked and the companies that don't know it. You know, there used to be two things that everybody used to know, which is death and taxes. Now you're talking about three things: death, taxes, and getting hacked. So all of this narrative that everybody who is a professional in the cybersecurity field keeps reiterating to businesses and individuals just leaves everybody in nothing else other than a tremendous sense of despair. So what we're going to do today is we're going to break out of this despair and talk about cybersecurity in a pragmatic way. What is it that you can do in your business, the way to think about cybersecurity in your business and in your life, that gives you some action, gives you some control. And in order for us to do that, we're going to have to establish a common vocabulary. We're going to have to be talking about things that both of us can understand. So the first thing that we need to talk about is, what is cybersecurity? So cybersecurity is nothing else other than a collection of best practices. It's a set of things we do. It's a set of things that have been proven to work. And they have been proven to work in preserving the three pillars of cybersecurity, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability of digital information. That's it. That is what cybersecurity is. Now, recently, Gartner added one more element to these three pillars of cybersecurity. They added safety. So cybersecurity, as per the Gartner addition now, is confidentiality, integrity, availability, and safety. Now, why safety? Because all of you have been reading in the news and you have been following all of these exciting advancements in the Internet of Things. The Internet that is connecting actual things now, like your car, like your smart television, like your refrigerator that knows when it's out of milk. So now we have confidentiality, integrity, and availability dealing with data, and we have safety dealing with people and environments. So that is what cybersecurity is. Now, it's important to get a sense of the scope of information that we deal with when we're talking about cybersecurity. This slide is a particular favorite of mine because it gives you the volume of data flowing through the internet in 1 minute. It is absolutely staggering to think that within worldwide, in a worldwide picture of the internet, over 23,000 hours of video are consumed in a minute. Think about it. The volume is absolutely staggering. So it is also life critical, because it's not only movies that is being broadcast in an internet minute, it is also health records. It is also mission critical systems that operate everything from the space station to your car. So what happens if you're in a highway going 75 miles an hour and this thing gets hacked? So it's a question of what happens if all this enormity of data falls into the wrong hands. Well, there is more, because within a few more years, we are looking at 25 billion, with a B, embedded systems in the world that access the internet. That produces a landscape ready to be hacked, ready to be threatened, ready to be acted upon. This is a world of opportunity if you are a hacker. So that is the world that we're looking at. And the risk, obviously, when you're talking about 25 plus billion exposed systems, is very big. Now, we keep throwing this word around, risk. The risk is big. The risk is low. There is this, there is that, and the other. Everything to do about risk. So let's talk about risk. What is risk? What exactly is risk? Risk is the likelihood of an event times its impact. That's what risk is. That is the definition of risk. How likely is it that something is going to happen? And if it does indeed happen, what is its impact going to be? That's risk. So how do you calculate risk? Well, if you're in the insurance business, you know how to calculate risk very, very well. Also, back in the good old days, before internet, risk was calculated in the form of statistics, right? Think hurricanes. So if you're in Miami and you want to figure out what is your risk of getting a hurricane, you can go into statistics, you can look things up. You can say, okay, well, there is an X amount probability that a hurricane in any 1 year is going to hit Miami. And you also can figure out its impact pretty well. Because hurricane's going to come in, if it's going to be a level 4, it's going to level the place, that's going to be expensive. We figured that one out. Now in the cybersecurity space, things are a little bit more complicated. For one, we don't have statistics. So if you don't have statistics, that's problem number one. Second, what is the impact? Because the impact is not always quantifiable with dollars. What happens if it's reputation? What happens if it's stolen information? So we have a way of trying to simulate this risk, try to quantify it. And we use low, medium, high, or we use a variety of scales. And in terms of impact, we fall back into the 3 pillars, or 4, including safety. So risk now, we mitigate risk through the use of controls. Now, this is an important thing because when you use a word like controls, it can be easily be misunderstood. And the thing that I want you to get away with from leaving today from this talk is when somebody's talking about controls and risk, you need to understand that controls do things. Control is not some abstract thing going on. Controls do stuff. So that you mitigate risk through the use of controls, okay? Risk can never, ever be zero. That's impossible. That can never happen. So at the end of the day, you have to accept a residual risk, okay? Inherent risk is the risk that you have if you have no controls in place. Residual risk is the risk that you have after you have applied controls. There is another way to say it. Residual risk is the cost of doing business. Okay? That is the risk that you accept for staying in business, using computers, or whatever it is that you are doing. So that is the story about risk. Now that we understand risk and we have a definition of cybersecurity, let's peel the onion one more layer. Let's talk about what is happening within cybersecurity. Well, in cybersecurity, the first thing you have is threats. Now, in the study of cybersecurity, you can quantify threats as random, target, or phishing threats, and we're going to spend some quality time on the phishing bit a little bit down a few slides. And there are many different agents that propagate these threats. These threats can be propagated by corporations, by nations, by hackers, which, by the way, the correct term for hackers shouldn't be hackers, should be crackers, but we digress. So it can be cyber criminals, it can be social hackers, it can be internal employees, it can be terrorists. There's a lot of different agents that can use threats to damage you in a cybersecurity kind of a way. Script kiddies is the classic vision of a hacker that we have in the basement of grandma's house playing with a computer and seeing if they can be naughty. So that's the script kiddie. Now, attacks is the actual occurrence of a threat. If the threats exist, now if a threat gets realized, that's an attack. So you have different kinds of attacks, but all of the attacks have certain common characteristics, okay? These characteristics involve reconnaissance, they involve tool creations, they involve the delivery of a payload, they do an exploit, they install malware, they do a variety of things, and that is kind of like the life cycle of an attack. Malware, which I just referenced to, are classified as viruses, worms, and Trojan horses. Now, I'm Greek, and we all know what the Trojan horse did for the Greeks. It is the same kind of thing in the cybersecurity world. They create a fake environment that goes into the computer and then releases something particularly nasty. The most prevalent way of doing that these days is through social engineering. So again, Save that thought, because we're going to talk about it in detail a little bit down the line. A cyber attack, therefore, is what? It is a very well-defined, advanced attack that is stealthy. It has a mission, and it will not stop. It will not stop until it either has accomplished its objective or it has been thwarted altogether. So, this is the slide that is the most important one for us today. This slide was produced in 2016 by Osaka and gives you the top 3 cyber threats in 2016. You will see that 52% of cyber threats are social engineering, 40% is insider threats, and 39% are advanced persistent threats. Now, I'm going to tell you this. If you are in this world of the 39 advanced persistent threat category, you're in a world of pain. Because you are a big institution, you are a government, you are the power grid, you are a massive hospital system, you are a bank. These are the kind of places that suffer advanced persistent threats. So be aware of that and keep it in mind that if you're working in those sectors, that is your world going forward. The 40% is something that is frequently overlooked because people talk about cybersecurity in the sense like there's outside people that are going to do inside harm. Well, the fact of the matter is there is 40% of cyber attacks are by insider threats. These insider threats are usually employees or contractors or any kind of individual that works from the inside out. And there are ways to mitigate this. There's controls that you can apply against insider threats. But this is very important, and we need to pay particular attention to it, especially when it comes into human resource management. You need to start wondering if employees are starting to ask for access in places that they usually don't have, and so on and so forth. There are ways of looking at that. But by far, the largest problem in cybersecurity today is social engineering. And social engineering has to do with people going out, finding information about yourself, and either pretending to be you, having access to your data, or using the information that they got from you to extort you or extort a financial institution, do identity theft. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So this stuff is expensive. Cybersecurity has a very, very real cost. So if you're playing in the cybersecurity game, bring your wallet. If you're a small business, it's going to cost you about $40,000 to recover from a cybersecurity attack. If you are a mid-sized business north, you're looking at $500,000 worth of an expenditure to recover from a cybersecurity attack. This is something that is expensive, a very, very expensive proposition. And as you can tell, by both the tone and the kind of landscape that we've been painting about cybersecurity, things are not that great. It is leaving us in a place where we really don't know what to do. We feel victimized, we feel very angry, and we've seen it in a lot of clients that they're frustrated and very, very upset, not knowing what it is that you can do about this. They go into denial. And that is one of the reasons that people get themselves into very big trouble. They're going to turn around and say, well, me worry about cybersecurity, I got nothing to worry about. You know, first of all, I'm not a target. I'm just a small business. I am, a hotel chain. Who cares? Really, nobody's going to be attacking me. That is the first approach that they take. The second approach that they take is like, I got antivirus, I'm covered. And besides, I've talked to everybody that works for me, and I told them not to open any spam email. We're good. Everybody understands that. We're safe and secure. I don't need to talk to you about it anymore. Now, the other thing is, I have IT. IT is king. You're talking about computers. Are you not talking about computers? If you're talking about computers, IT is going to take care of it. They're the people in the back room, the lights are dark, and we throw them raw meat. They're going to take care of it. Well, the fact of the matter is that IT doesn't take care of it, and we're going to talk about that in some detail. But that is not what the truth is. That is not the truth at all. So the question that I'm asking to all of you is like, do you want to know the truth? Do you really want to know the truth? Which brings us to the next question. Can you handle this truth? because it's not going to be something that you're going to like, because it's going to pull you away from your comfort zone, forcing you to look at it. And the fact is, you have to break this illusion that cybersecurity is taken care of in your organization. Because most people think that this is what they have when it comes to cybersecurity. They are a business and they have the Marines. They are protecting them. Fact of the matter is, that's not what they have. It's closer to this. This is what you have for cybersecurity. And it's not necessarily a particularly pretty picture. And you got to rectify this, because this is not getting you anywhere. So, where is the disconnect here? The disconnect is in confusing personal and business. This denial comes in when we are, thinking that these attacks are personal, when in fact, what is really happening is that it is business. The blend of personal and business is very confusing to people when it comes to cybersecurity, because it's personal data that is being stolen for business purposes, but not your business, their business. So this is the critical thing, and this is part of the disconnect. So 80% of hackers are now working with organized crime to steal personal data. Why? Do you remember the famous line when they asked the bank robber, why do you keep hitting banks? Because he said that's where the money is. That's why this is happening. This is where the money is. So mind you, it is important to remember that billions of electronic records with personal information right now is exposed all over the world. So your records, with very little doubt, is exposed right now and available in the dark web. So you'll say, well, that's fine and good, but if that is the case, then why haven't I been hacked? Well, you haven't been hacked because they haven't gotten to you yet. There is millions and millions of records. It's just a question of arithmetic. Eventually they'll get to you. Those records are out there, and they're just working down the list. Your name just happens to be on the bottom of the list or further down the list. So that is why you haven't been hacked. That's why this illusion of security exists. Data brokers collect more than 50 trillion unique data transactions all about you, and you have absolutely no recourse about it. Everybody here knows about the credit bureaus. Everybody knows that you have a credit report. You also know that you have the right to get a copy of your credit report once a year, look at it, and if you find something wrong with it, you can dispute it. You can go back to the credit bureau and say, hey, I didn't open this account with Chase Bank. I don't even like these people. I only bank with Bank of America. And you can correct the error in your credit report. Not so much with a data broker. There is no legislation about it. Anything that they collect about you, they are storing and reselling, including reselling it to hackers, because even hackers will go and buy it off the web, of a data broker, if it's cheaper than hacking it themselves. Why not? And actually, there are several instances that has happened. So this is very, very important, and you can see the blend of personal and business. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a phone, and this is a fairly old statistic, but 82% of Android phones track your movement, and it can be reported back. In 2014, which in cybersecurity times is ancient history, an American was victim of identity theft every 2 seconds. This talk is about half an hour. Do the math. And it's not 2014 anymore. In 2011, if we keep going back, 600,000 Facebook accounts were hacked every single day. The number now is even bigger. And now it has also propagated in other places like the LinkedIn profiles and so on and so forth. How many times, I'm sure that you have experienced an invitation by a LinkedIn profile, and when you go to even look at it, you get a message from LinkedIn that says, no, this profile doesn't exist, it has been deleted. That is exactly why, because these profiles have been hacked. Antivirus and anti-malware software catches only 5% of new threats. They catch 100% of the old threats, but only 5% of the new threats. Why? Everybody heard of the flu virus? Everybody heard that we go and we inoculate ourselves every year against the flu. Okay? You can still fall sick. Why? Because you're inoculating yourself with the virus of the previous year. Now, if you're lucky, this year's flu looks a lot like last year's flu, and your body knows what to do with that and says, oh, okay, I'm going to be, it's a control. I'm going to feel better. I'm not going to fall down sick and all that. But if it is substantially different, the party is over. You're staying home, coughing, wheezing, and eating chicken soup. That is how this stuff works. This antivirus, anti-malware stuff works the same way. They have a signature, and they compare incoming things against the signature. If it matches, they stop it. If it doesn't match, you're in trouble. Big data enables cybercrime. That goes all the way back up to the data brokers. There is an environment of big data, and I'm going to show you a slide that demonstrates this, that enables cybercrime because it consolidates information from thousands and thousands of sources, from Facebook, from LinkedIn, for anything that you can imagine, into these data brokers, making this information readily accessible, and it enables cybercrime. The way to get into a business is through its employees, back into the blend of personal and business, personal and business. If I can hack an employee, I can get into the business if that's my goal. It is the easiest target in. And finally, board members and executives. The higher up you're in the food chain, the easier a target you are. Most board members tending to be on the older side, they are not necessarily particularly technology savvy, and what happens, they can be very easily compromised. And once that happens, now I have a privileged access because I'm an executive, and the executive tends to have more privileged access into systems than a lowly employee. So how do we get all this data? We are enjoying a wealth of free services. Google, Microsoft, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of these beautiful services are out there, and they are there for free for your enjoyment. Do you ever wonder how these things get paid? It's not from the advertising. And they're not giving you these free services for your blue eyes. You are the product of these services. You're not the customer. Have you ever seen Facebook have an 1-800 number for customer support that you know of? No, because you're not the customer. You're the product. And TASTAFL is something that a favorite author of mine, Robert Heinlein, wrote, and it stands for, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. There ain't. So when you're using Facebook, when you're using any of those services, realize that you are the product, and realize that everything that you do there is being sold to somebody because it is valuable, and that's how Facebook makes money. We spoke about big data. This is how big data looks like. Big data is massive, massive business, and it is exponentially growing. It is growing in terms of services, it is growing in terms of capacity, it is growing in terms of machine learning and abilities to process this data, and a lot of these names in here, I suspect none of you have ever heard. Because although these companies are huge and they're doing incredible work, it is on the sidelines. They are processing these volumes and volumes and volumes of information. But what are you going to do with big data unless you have big search? And everybody knows Google. Google this, Google that, Bing this, Google that. Everybody understands that. It's easy to understand. But have you heard of things like Axiom, perhaps Compass, or Infogroup? Hardly anybody knows of these places. But those are the data aggregators. Those are the guys that have all this information about individuals, and it is there that this information is being traded and sold. What do I mean by that? People don't necessarily connect with that. So if I'm about to buy an apartment and I'm about to take a mortgage, the bank or a third-party lender, let's not just talk about banks, a third-party lender is going to ask for a credit report. They may ask for a background check, but they may also ask a data broker, hey, I want to know everything there is to know about this Chris Moschovitis guy. What have you got? So they're going to go to a data broker who has collected information about me from places I have no idea about, and this data broker is going to provide them with a report. And if in that report it says that Chris Moschovitis is broke, Chris Moschovitis has had bankruptcies, or he is very seriously ill, there is no way for me to know this, and nor is there a way for me to contest that information yet. the lender is going to use that information and say, you know, you're a bigger risk than I thought. So instead of giving you the favorable rate, I'm going to give you a higher rate. This is how this affects your life in a very pragmatic way. Social engineering is the avenue whereby most of this data is connected. So how does this happen? It happens, first of all, through extremely well-organized and thorough research. The people that are going after social engineering are no fools. There is a methodology behind this. They, of course, hit all the major profile places like LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, but then they go deeper. They go to the data brokers. They go to all that kind of stuff. And this is not a hard thing to learn by any stretch of the imagination. You can find out how to become a wonderful hacker just by buying books off Amazon. And if you're feeling particularly adventurous, get yourself Tor, get into the black web, and you will find how-to manuals across the board to teach you how to become a successful social engineer. Social engineering now uses methodologies to try to trick you in believing that there's somebody else. So what are some of these examples that can put you at risk? I know that it sounds crazy, but if your domain name has an M, you're at an increased risk. And our company, tmg-emedia, has 2 M's in it. So it is probably, this is telling me that my company is at higher risk than most. If you accept files on your website, like resumes or other applications, you are at an increased risk. If you're using wire transfers or ACH payments, you're at an increased risk. You have opened up another gateway. If your company is maintaining LinkedIn profiles, if your employees are maintaining Facebook profiles, even if your website has pictures and bios of your top executives, you're feeding the monster. You're giving them more and more and more. And finally, if you have a big finance department, that is just perfect, because I can now pretend to be Bob in finance, and you wouldn't know Bob because you have 300 people working in finance. So you can't possibly know everybody in finance. So some of the commonly spoofed domains are on your screen right now. And if you are working during the day, and like all of us are, and going crazy, and you're getting an email from any of these domains, I can pretty much assure you that you won't pay attention, and you will think that Citigroup is Citigroup, because you didn't pay very close attention. Now, we were talking about the M, huh? Our own domain. This is tmg-emedia.com. It has 2 M's in it. So if you get an email from tmg-emedia.com, you should be trustworthy about it, right? How about if we take this and put it in all caps? Just use the R and the N. And if you use the R and the N in an email, you won't be able to tell the difference. Now, it just so happens that we are smart enough, we actually bought this domain so nobody can use it. But you get the idea. This is an easy way to do it. And how effective is this kind of stuff? It is outrageously effective. This effective. 1 minute, 22 seconds is the median time it takes for a spoofed email to be activated. 1 minute 22, according to Verizon 2015 data breach report. They are very convincing. The examples of this stuff is endless. In New York State, the Easy Pass is a classic example, but frequently in small and large businesses, you get emails from your bank, you get emails from a colleague, the typical message from the CEO to finance, please wire this transaction, do all of that kind of stuff, is all of these fake emails. And it is extraordinarily effective. And remember, like the banker, why do you keep robbing banks? Because that's where the money is. So, meanwhile, back in the farm, we are struggling with all of this, and all of this focuses around one single thing, focuses about identity. How do I know that you are you when you are behind a computer? This is not a trivial thing to think about. It's complicated. There are many times that people have said, oh, the death of the password and this and that and the other. Fact of the matter is, this is a complicated story, and it's going to take a lot in order for us to have a better authentication platform, a better authentication methodology. And it's typically going to involve around a 2-factor authentication, which I urge you to use all the time. So even if you have Gmail, Gmail itself has a 2-factor authentication, so you can use that. They'll send you a text on your phone. And that, by the way, is what's called out of band, right? So you're using your computer to log into Gmail, and that's one band because you're using the computer, and then you're getting the authentication on a text message or your phone in a different band, out of band authentication. But now there are other methodologies that continuously check and try to identify who you are. They can tell how you type. They can look at the camera and make sure that it's constantly used. So it's not as if somebody put a gun to your head, makes you put in your password, and then puts you aside, and then they start robbing the company. No, because now you have a different kind of keystroke and a different kind of sequence. So they can tell if it is still you on the keyboard. Also, where are you? Who you know from social networks? All of these kinds of stuff are ways by which we know. So, where does all this leave us? It leaves us in a state of war. Winter is not coming. Winter is here. And we have to get ready to fight this war. And how are we going to fight it? We're going to get work. That's exactly how we're going to fight it. Okay? So I've written down 10 steps for you to think about and follow in your business to help you win this war. Step 1, you need to trust yourself. Stop with the denial and trust yourself. Recognize that it is you and you alone that know best your business. So trust yourself. Think war, not battle. This is not a do once and forget. This is something that you have to remain on and staying on. This is a long game. Think baseball season. It's a long season. Okay? You're not alone in this. Your colleagues, your competitors, the whole society is with you in this. There is many resources for you to turn to, from expert resources to colleagues that can share with you their best practices. Do not hesitate to ask. If you're suffering alone in cybersecurity, you're getting hacked. You need to be talking and sharing information all the time. Determine what's worth protecting. Not everything has the same value. A financial system may be worth more expensive controls than, say, a system that just has plain data about your production facility. I'm just using it as an example. You and you alone know what's worth it. And you need to talk to the owners, and by the owners, I don't mean the business owners or the shareholders of the business. Talk to the business process owner. Talk to the person who is responsible of getting stuff done. Because you can walk up to that person and say, hey, listen, you're in charge of production. What's at risk here? What is the thing that if it was missing, destroyed, or corrupted, you would suffer? For how long can you afford to suffer? Do you need to be up and running immediately, or can you be dark for a week? Talk to those guys. Those are the guys that know these kinds of answers. Identify the threats. What is your organization's highest threat? Is it social engineering? I bet the answer is probably yes. As opposed to, like we spoke earlier, advanced persistent threats. Well, you're running the power grid of the country. That's, social engineering is not the number one threat you're looking at. So, identify the threat. Think with intelligence, okay? Protect with the right controls. Remember, like we discussed earlier, controls do stuff. Controls also cost money. And the rule is, you cannot spend more in controls than the value of the asset, which is why we have step number 4. You have to figure out how much the thing is worth. And then you can apply the right control in order to do that. And the path to your survival is defense in depth. It's not about applying a single control and everything's going to be fine. No. You apply one control, and then after that control, you apply another control, and after that control, you apply another control. So if one gets compromised, the other one kicks in, and so on and so forth. Defense in depth. Finally, recognize that cybersecurity is not about technology. It is never about technology. It is all about people. And it is very important that you embed that into the culture of your organization. It is absolutely critical. It is about people. You need to train your people. You need to talk to your people. You need to sensitize your people to the risk of cybersecurity today. Cybersecurity awareness training is a very powerful control, and this is what we're doing today. Hopefully you're leaving this presentation with you being aware of what's going on out there, and the simple fact of being aware makes you better protected. And finally, learn to live into, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Compliments of the National Institutes of Science and Technology in their cybersecurity framework. Wiser words and wiser methodology has not been said. Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Notice the absence of the word prevent. This is not about prevent. If you think that cybersecurity at any point is about prevention, you're wrong. It's not. It is about identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. There is no preventive in cybersecurity because cybersecurity continuously evolves. It is a creative endeavor, for the lack of a better word. So, are you ready? You have to be ready. That is the right answer. You need to be ready. And remember, cybersecurity is a common goal for all of us. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate it. If there are any questions, I will be around for a while to answer anything that you may have. Thank you again.